Alright, it's time for our next mod, and today we're going to be installing a thermostatically controlled oil cooler with a port for an electronic gauge. So we're going to need hose, we're going to need fittings, we need a way to get into our cooler, we need a way to get from our thermostat device, and this is something that I purchased so that I can put this in the vise and make my fittings, as opposed to putting the fittings in the vise and either hurting the fittings or scuffing them up. So now if you know anything about oil coolers, you've probably seen this sandwich plate. The sandwich plate basically goes between the oil filter and the engine block and has a couple ports out to where you can send a hose away and send a hose back, and you can actually run your this is not thermostatically controlled, this is always on, but it does have a port here for your sensor. I started with this, and I will probably end up sending it back because I found something better, much better. Now keep in mind I've got a 2002 Tahoe with a Vortec engine, which is similar to an LS1, and I just happened to stumble across this company, Improved Racing. Their website is improvedracing.com, and look what they have. For those of you who are familiar with these LS1 engines know that right above your oil filter there's a port. And check this out. This goes right there in that port. Okay, so this is thermostatically controlled. It has lines in and out for your hoses, and it has a port for your sensor. So everything that I want in a cooler. Now, one thing that you don't see here is the cooler itself, and that is because I have a Griffin all aluminum 2-core radiator that has both a trans cooler and an oil cooler. If you're going to be doing a cooler and you don't have a transmission with a cooler, you're going to have to buy a cooler. The cooler will look similar to this. This is my trans cooler, and they come in all shapes and sizes. Like, say for example, if I wanted to do a oil cooler or an engine, if I wanted to do an engine oil cooler in addition to the one that I have in the radiator, I would probably get a long and skinny one and put it there. But because I've got this radiator that has ports for, there's the one with the orange little thing in it, there's another one down there, this is on the driver's side. This has got an oil cooler in it. Similarly, on the passenger side, it has a transmission cooler. So on the transmission side, I'm running into the cooler down there, coming out of the trans cooler up there, and then coming out front and going through this trans cooler. Anybody that has a truck similar to this with the towing package on it has a stock trans cooler. Alright, so back to the subject at hand. If you are going to be putting in an oil cooler and you do not have an oil cooler in your transmission already, you're going to need an exterior oil cooler. So I guess step one for this project is to determine how long your hoses need to be. This hose is braided stainless steel. I just got a 10-foot length. I had no idea how much I needed, but then what I did was I ended up from the block. I'll show you where I went. Alright, so this is what I'm talking about. On the where the Improved Racing thing goes is right here on the side of the engine block. What I did was I tied a string from there, and I ran the string up where I'm going to be running up and along where I'm going to be running my hoses, which I'm not exactly sure what I'm looking at right now, but it's obviously going to go up and forward, end up here somewhere, and then one hose is going to go to the bottom and the other hose is going to go to the top. And then so one hose ended up being 1 foot longer than the other. So I've got my lengths for my hoses, and the first thing that I'm going to do is make my hoses. Alright, so time to get started. The first thing that I'm going to do is the fittings that the company sent me to go into my radiator. I'm going to make sure that they fit and that they work. because I don't want to cut the hose lengths and I don't want to mess anything else up. It doesn't really make any sense for me to go any further if I can't get it into my cooler in my radiator. So I'm going to check to make sure that they've provided me with the correct fitting. And this will just involve me taking off the fitting that they provided and putting on the new one. Looks like the fitting that they provided me is perfect, so threads are perfect, size is perfect. I'm going to back this thing out and put some Teflon tape in it and go ahead and put it in permanently. Okay, top one fit perfectly, so I'm going to go ahead and put the bottom one in. Alright, top one's on perfect. Bottom one is on as well, and now I'm getting ready to make my hoses. Okay, first thing I've done was I measured off my length. In my particular case, it's 4 feet 5 inches, and put some electrical tape on it. And now I'm gonna cut it off. All right, so that cutting wheel gives us a nice and clean. If you get some frayed edges that you're not crazy about, a good pair of tin snips will help out. All right, no burrs, no problems. All right, here's what I'm using from raceflux.com. 90 degree. They come in all sorts of different degrees, but I got 90 degrees. Just take it off, put it on here, turn in a clockwise position, get it on there nice and tight. Now you can mark the hose with a Sharpie if your hose isn't black, but if your hose is black, there's no marking with a Sharpie. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark my hose, and that becomes important later. So I'm just going to kind of mark this line right there. Like I said, if you have a Sharpie, you can mark it that way. And there it is. Am I on? Alright, so I'm going to move over here a little bit. And we're going to get ready to do the rest. Alright, now this is from Summit. I'm sure you can buy them elsewhere, but got magnets on them. Put that one there. And that one there. Line them up. And then you can take your fitting and put it right there. And this will make it to where you don't mar up your fitting. This will hold your fitting nice and tight for you. And take your other end. And good work. Get it going as much as you can. And then bring in the big guns. Now, you're going to tighten this down to where you get a clearance of no more than 0.3. All right, if you could see that at all, the middle feeler gauge is 0.3. And, oh, I can still get it in there. I can still get it in there, even at 0.34. So, I'll need to torque me down some more. 0.030. All right, I cannot get my 0.030 in there. And I'm good. All right, so that's one side. Alright, so here's our first hose. Alright, time to get building this oil cooler. They provided us with fittings with the O-ring right there. So we'll hit this with a little bit of oil. Make sure you don't cross thread it. I got thermostat. See the thermostat in there? Check that out. Just a little bit more. So now this is going to go in here like that. This is a swivel, and because it's a swivel, I'm going to go ahead and put this on now. Go ahead and put this where it belongs on the car. And directions say you can mount it up or you can mount it down. I said it doesn't matter, because you're going to replace the stock gasket and replace it with these two guys. It's got a 1/8 MPT on there, so that you could put either a oil pressure or oil temp sensor. If you don't have that, go ahead and install this little silver thing right there, which will fit in the hole. I'm going to be putting a temp gauge on there. So pretty cool. It's got the temp gauge and it's thermostatically controlled. Okay, so there is what we're going to be taking off right there. All right, now if you have a four-wheel drive, you may be looking at something that looks like this, which is your front drive shaft. Mine is already undone because I had to undo it when I put in the gauge for my transmission oil temp. So let me pull. It's 4 bolts, and then you just got to kind of push the drive shaft forward. It's kind of like a shock. You can push it forward, and then it'll pass this bar right here and just kind of let it hang where it's not in your way. I got an oil bucket here because when I take those two suckers off, I'm gonna get some oil. There it is right there. Here comes the oil. Go ahead and tighten you back down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run my hose and make sure that it's the right length before I cut the other hose. Alright, so I decided to run the lines and attach them, and I checked my clearance, and my clearance is fine. So now I'm going to go ahead and tighten these guys down and put her into place. Alright, there it is. It's on. And I can tell you, putting the lines on first was definitely a good idea. Absolutely don't forget the little 2 circle gaskets that it comes with. Alright, now for the other side. The out hose is the longer one, so the out's going to go to the top. Alright, so hoses are hooked up both here and down there. So the only thing I have left to do is my temperature sensor, which is going to go into the other side. Alright, there it is again, right there, and we have our sensor in there and nice and tight, and I got the other end of the sensor right here. Can you see right there? Got the other end of the sensor right there, and I need both hands to plug them in. Okay, so believe it or not, one of the trickiest parts of this install was figuring out how to run the wiring for the sensor. You can see that it is in its final place now, which it's going to run forward to the engine, and it's going to run parallel with the oil lines. I had it originally dropping straight down, and my problem with it dropping straight down was the drive shaft, and then trying to get it over. You got the catalytic converter and all the exhaust stuff here. So long story short, you don't want to run it down and around or anywhere near the drive shaft or the exhaust pipe for obvious reasons. And it took me a while to figure out that the best way to run it was forward. So it's actually going forward, it's going to the front of the block, and then it's coming up, and then I just kind of run it along other wires until it finds its way up to the ground on the firewall. I also encased it in this wire conduit loom stuff.